All right, namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Pranic Healing podcast. On today's episode, we have Amy Williams, and the topic for today's podcast is really exciting because it's all about how we can use the teachings in Pranic Healing and apply it to our family, and especially if you're a parent. So, Amy is an international author and founder of Parenting Through Prana. She combines pranic healing, neuroscience, and heart-centered guidance to help parents and adult children become an energy ally for their families. She began Master Choa Koksui's Pranic Healing in 2011, and now she lives the Arhatic Yoga lifestyle. Amy also has a background in the Waldorf Education and homeschooling, and she loves helping her clients know themselves more deeply and embrace loving life. Welcome to the podcast, Amy.
Hi, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, really happy to be here, Amy. And like a lot of pranic healers, I think we know, your work. You've been in the field for a while, and especially with your specialty. So I'm really excited to talk about the theme or topic today, which is how heart-centered parenting is like living the meditation on twin hearts in your daily family life. So, love that topic. How important twin hearts it is for us pranic healers. Before we jump into that topic, I think the audience would be curious. How did you kind of get started in this specialty, especially in pranic healing? Because it's not really, I would say, conventional. Pranic healing is all about, physical healing and, psychotherapy. But it sounds like you're kind of combining both of that or all of that into your specialty.
Yeah. When I came into Pranic Healing in 2011, I had one daughter, and it was very important to me at the time. I was already always looking for how can I be the best parent that I can be? How can I make sure, I don't mess my children up? What can I do? And so that was a big area of personal growth. And I read a lot of books, and I just kind of felt like something was still missing. I really came to a point as I had more children and I kept growing where I almost felt like a lot of books were telling me how to have a degree in psychology to manipulate my children to get the behaviors that I wanted from them. And it felt icky inside of me. And I felt like while I was doing it, my kids were looking at me like, what are you doing? Like, why are you? And it didn't work for very long either. The things like say when you get something done instead of if you get something done. And there were all these sort of like but they would figure out these patterns very quickly. And what I really realized was that a lot of times I was giving an appearance of being calm and happy, and I'm using the right tone of voice, and I'm down on their level, and I'm using the right behaviors, but inside I would still be very angry or I was not calm, right? So it was almost, I came to a point where I felt like it was really like gaslighting our children, where it's like we're showing these physical cues, and then it really led me to dive into how do I embody that more? And of course, as I grew with Pranic Healing, I learned more and more tools, and then Arhatic Yoga. And for a while, I really was looking at managing my children's behavior. How do I make sure they're happy so that they're calm, so that then as a result, I can be a calm, happy parent? And I came to the realization that that was completely backwards, and it all really came with me. Anything I thought that I was brilliant enough to start teaching them about forgiveness or anything, they had already taught me 100-fold. They were already showing that, how many times I would lose my patience and they would be right there 2 minutes later saying, Mommy, I love you. Come play with me. Like, we strive to be at that level of forgiveness, they didn't really need to be taught it. I just needed to learn how to get out of the way. And so, I just kept looking, and for years I just kind of kept praying and asking, like, show me what this is. And I felt like we had reached such a silly point in life where it was so hard to parent. It's so hard to know what is the right thing to do and how to act and what to choose. And I studied anthropology, and so I was really looking for like what was this all-encompassing human answer. And I felt like it took me longer than it should have to realize that the answer was really energy. It's pervasive and everything. It's really just like that golden thread that ties everything together. And once you know how to master that and work with that, it becomes so much easier. But then there was also that question of how do we utilize that in the moment, right? How can I actually tell someone something that's going to help them when they really need it? So as wonderful as all the tools are that we have in pranic healing, they're really built on establishing a practice. So I was looking for how do we use it in the moment, right? I can't be in the store with my toddler screaming about wanting cookies and throwing themselves on the floor and be like, hold on, sweetheart, can you guys watch her? Mommy's gonna go meditate. I'll be right back. And then I can handle this, you
Right,
know?
if only, right?
Yeah. And so the more that I was diving into this, the more I realized the importance of our heart center. And it really is in everything we look at, all of these major philosophies, even our own practices like twin hearts, it always comes back to the heart. And so I realized that building that relationship and having more ability to recognize when we are in a closed down or contracted state in our heart versus an expanded state, we build that awareness and then we make a mindful choice to continuously choose expansion. Now the heart is active, the crown is activated, we're more in touch with the intuition and the divine guidance. Our nervous system is calm, so we can stay in that prefrontal cortex and make good decisions. We're not in an amygdala hijack that's making us run off of our subconscious programming. And then we're in our optimal state. Now that's the place you want to parent from, because from that place, you're not parenting from your trauma and the stress of the situation. You can really have that kind of bubble like we get in twin hearts where you have that delayed reaction. Your aura is filled with pink loving energy and gold energy. And so it's more transmuting. So the things that are coming in aren't stressing you out as much. So it's really, I think, the absolute optimal space to parent from. And it's just a matter of learning and building up that resilience within the heart to be able to stay in that more often.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Amy. I mean, I love your story because I feel like a lot of parents and, future parents can definitely hear and deeply understand what you're saying because as even for myself, a person that is looking forward to be a future parent, it's just so much pressure. Like you said, you want to be the perfect parent. You want to give your children what you didn't have. And sometimes, like you said, it's almost like you're lying to yourself internally, but on the outside, externally, you're trying your best, right? You said based on those different psychological principles and teachings that you've learned, and it's almost like gaslighting yourself, and there's almost this disconnect. And I totally hear you, and I feel like that definitely applies in many different areas, but especially parenting with your kids. And I'm just so grateful to hear that your kids have the opportunity to be with you as a mom, because that's very special. And I'm just like, man, I wish I had. Well, every parent's different, but I wish my parents learned what you're teaching now, because it would have really helped, again, my development. But going back to what you said, heart-centered parenting, so powerful, and it is very unique when you say that in the context of pranic healing, because we know the energy is that thread, like you said. The energy is the paper trail. It doesn't lie. It's very objective, even though we think it's subjective from the outside. And it really guides our thoughts, emotions, and actions in the practice of being a heart-centered parent. So, my question is for you, Amy, like, how do we, whether we're parents now or, you know, people thinking of becoming future parents, how do we tap into that heart-centered space? Because, so many things are going on nowadays and we get distracted and we like you said, we get pulled back to that amygdala, that fight or flight, that fear state. How do we come back to that heart-centered space and really be mindful of it every moment? Because I think that's a challenge for a lot of people.
It is a challenge. And I talk about this in my book, how it's so simple. It's almost too simple, right? We hear all the time, only love is real and everything is love. And it's so simple that it requires so much explanation, right? So I try to focus on very, not necessarily easy, but simple ways of doing this. So there are just infinitesimal ways to activate your heart. There's no end to the amount of ways you can do it. I like to give people ways that feel a little more like you're in control and are also shifting us out of the solar plexus and helping us to activate kind of our will while we're doing it. And the reason I choose the way I do it is because it's also reprogramming our neural connections when you do it this way. So if you want, I can just kind of walk you through something real
Sure,
quick.
please. Yeah.
So again, this is going to take some practice. It's you don't walk into a gym and just try to bench press 500 pounds, right? You understand that when it comes to the physical body, you have to build up that strength and the resilience. And our heart is the same. I mean, if we think about it as an energetic muscle, we have to build up the strength to do that.
Yeah.
So it does take some practice, but it's a very exponential return. It's not kind of like I did it one time and it didn't, I have to do this a million times. The more that you're doing it, it's almost like the more you can carry, the easier it becomes to do. It's one of the few practices that I've done outside of specifically something I learned in Pranic Healing, where it just continues to deepen and get stronger and better. There are other things that I've tried where it seems like it works for a little while and then it kind of wears off, like the newness of it doesn't work as well. So part of what we're going to do is we're going to create self-love inside of ourselves. And the way I define self-love is, are you imbued with loving energy? This is yourself filled with love. And that can feel uncomfortable at first, and it can feel silly, and it can feel like it's not working. But really, the more you feel hesitant towards it, it's telling you the more you need it. The more, the more that's what needs to come through. Because if you didn't need it, then you would just have it. It would just be you operating from that natural state. So, okay, you can put your hands on your heart or just bring your attention to your heart. You can just take a couple of breaths. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Okay, you can breathe normally. And you can already, if you're sensitive, you can already start to feel a shift and an expansion. But now you're just going to say, I love you to your heart. I love you. I love you. And it's okay if this feels emotional and you've never done it before, or if it feels stupid or silly. Let it be whatever it is. And you can just keep saying that. The more you do that, the more you might find emotions are rising up or thoughts are coming challenging that. But you can just sit in that, I love you. And it doesn't have to be serious. You can be really playful and just be like, I love you. Or, be like, I love you. Whatever is going to bring you some happiness. So that is the simplest foundation to this technique, is just connecting with the heart and directing that love. As we're expanding it, the energy is kind of flowing out and we're saying, I deserve that. We're creating like this return cycle of I love, I love, I love. The more that we say I love, the more that we choose whatever's happening around us our number one response to that is I'm going to go to my heart and say, I love you. I'm going to expand that heart. That starts to rewire everything in the brain. Whereas before is, oh, this thing makes me mad. Oh, this is frustrating. Oh, it doesn't matter what it is. The new response becomes, I love. And then as parents, we make that even more practical. And anyone, not just parents, right? Or now you're going to practice this really radical honesty. I love whatever comes to mind, whatever feeling you have. I love that. So I always I always use the example of like, my kids' shoes are everywhere, right? And it's like I've told them to pick them up 100 times. It's like, I love the one who wants to scream and yell. I love the one who wants to take all of these shoes and throw them away. I love the one who wishes there weren't shoes to have to trip over. The more completely honest you are, like, don't try to sugarcoat it and be like, I love the one who's a little frustrated. When you're really just seething with rage inside, be honest about it. And it doesn't matter how dumb it is, what's making you angry? Yes, I know they're kids in their shoes, but that doesn't change that in that moment, it triggered me to be frustrated and angry. And in that moment, that's the thing that you need to love. And as you send love through that thing, it transmutes it. So
Yeah.
it's very, very quick, and it reprograms the mind. So if you think about it like you're, we always say in Pranic Healing, right? Big fish eat small fish, right? So if the big fish is all this frustration, all of these things, you can come up with a million ways of saying it. But if you always start with I love, then I love becomes the big fish. And it can
Mm.
eat anything then, right? And so if you consider it like the brain, um, as we are, I think of the most easy way to explain this, as we are taking that prana and we are saying, I love, we're sending it to, we're pinpointing the spot in the brain that holds that thought, the thought that says, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, and that's where we're sending the love through the neural pathways too. So we're moving that prana through the neural pathways to exactly where it needs to go. The more specifically we identify the thing that needs loved.
Mm. Wow. And I think that that connects really well, Amy, to Twin Hearts, right? Which is the
Yeah.
heart and brain connection, as we know.
Mhm.
And I wanted to really share my deep appreciation on what you just said because you're loving what you can't deny, especially in your children, right? Of course there might be the frustration of shoes everywhere and things might be a mess, but you're loving what you can't deny in that child, as your child. And it's that essence, right? That almost energetic love essence, spiritual essence between you and your child. And I think that's amazing because like you said, you're not like gaslighting yourself like, oh, I love everything, I love this and that, but you're being consciously aware of, okay, maybe that frustration is there, but it's a small fish. But the bigger fish, like you kind of highlighted, is like when you get into that habit, that repetition, you build, and strengthen that neural pathway from your heart to your brain, which is again twin hearts is what we talk about. And that becomes the bigger fish, and that becomes almost the default mode that you operate from. So that's
Yeah.
really cool, really really cool. And I've never really thought about it that way, but it totally makes sense. And speaking of that, I know you said you kind of transform the energy from the solar plexus, which is, for those who don't know, is all about the center of self-will, self-desire, what you need, especially as a parent, because you deserve love, attention, healing as well. But transforming that into the heart center, because we know the solar plexus can get congested from stress and day-to-day activities, from the heart. And again, that really connects to twin hearts because we really want to make these two the foundation. So can you kind of explain a little bit more, Amy? Because I know on this podcast we have a lot of pranic healers, but we have also a lot of non-pranic healers. So can you help us dive deep a little bit more into the context of how Twin Hearts, we know we practice it, but how does that really connect into heart-centered parenting on a day-to-day, lifestyle?
Yes. Okay. So the first step that we do in meditation on Twin Hearts is you focus on the heart, right? We activate the heart first. That's the most important. And we do it, like I said, there's so many ways of doing it. Master Choa in Twin Hearts, he has us think of a happy memory, right? Think, relive it, re-experience a good event. That's not always easy when you're stressed out and frustrated. But when we're doing the meditation, right, we sink into that space and we activate and we expand the heart. And the moment that the heart starts to expand and activate, it actually helps to balance out and soothe the lower chakras. So it starts to automatically kind of put that a little bit more in balance. A lot of times what we're feeling as that contraction of the heart is part because the solar plexus is so big and so dirty right now. It's like choking us, right? It's like coming up and it's like hindering and pushing on that. And so we kind of empower the heart to say, no, I've got this. I've got this. Calm down. I'm in charge. And then by activating the heart, it automatically activates the crown. In Twin Hearts, we put more focus on it so that the crown becomes even more activated so that more divine energy can pour in. So as the heart expands and then the crown expands, we have this divine energy that's coming down. And within that divine energy, it is soothing and happy and blissful and all the things that we want to be, that we enjoy experiencing. And then with that, the more that you practice, the more connection you actually have to your higher soul and the more connection you have to that divine wisdom. So it's not just love, it's intelligence, it's love, it's power. So now you have the power to have more self-control. You have that intelligence and that wisdom. And when you're in a state of calm like that, again, there's a cascade of effects that happen throughout the physical body. You're no longer in front of, the child, like gritting your teeth, like, okay, let's get your shoes on, you have that peace. Your nervous system is calm. You don't feel like you're in danger. And that's a big part of what happens as parents. We experienced something in our childhood that said, if you don't get your shoes on fast enough, something bad might happen. And so now when our children dawdle at putting their shoes on, we just can't handle it. It's just so overwhelming. But the more that you're doing this, whether it's through Twin Hearts or just focusing more on this heart-centered parenting, if you're not a pranic healer, then the more you're putting yourself in connection with the soul. So now those kind of earthly annoyances aren't as bothersome anymore. You're less connected to identifying as the body, as the mind, and as the emotions. You're more identified as the soul. And so from the soul's perspective, this is really not a big deal. This is hilarious. We don't care. I've even had parents who say, well, my child's, they're kicking and they're screaming and they're hitting me on the way to the car and, they are hurting me. And then we always have this moment where I say, but are you really hurt? Your essence, who you are, or is the body just hurt right now? And that shift of, oh, it is just the body. It is just my emotions that are hurt. It is just this thought that's coming up. So as you have more of that divine energy pouring down in Twin Hearts and through doing heart-centered practices, then, which I don't want to try to say that this is in any way a replacement for Twin Hearts. It's just simply a way of using the same mechanism in your daily life. It's in no way a replacement. But as the divine energy is coming down, it's also cleaning out and clearing that out as you're doing that intentionally and willfully and mindfully and saying, I want to activate this. I want this help. The help comes. The calm comes, the beings of light, they come and they help. And so we're going from the heart up to the crown, right? And then we have this divine energy coming down. It's cleaning our brain. It's helping calm our nervous system. And then in Twin Hearts, we pause. There's the stillness, there's the silence, and we sit in that. And the more that you choose heart-centered parenting, the more you are choosing to live more of your life in that gap. The gap of potential where anything can happen as opposed to just reacting. And so the more time you spend focusing on allowing that space, right? When we focus on our heart and we say the I love yous or the other practices I share in my book, then you're waiting for an answer. You're letting what comes up come up. So you are spending more of your life and your time in that gap, which is part of what's so important. That's where we get to hear from. And then from there, we bring it out and we bless. And we bring from the crown, we bring from the heart, all of that divine energy, and we share it around us. And when you're choosing to parent in a heart-centered way, when you're choosing to activate the heart, there's all kinds of parenting, gentle parenting and attachment parenting and all of that. And it's all wonderful. But I think underneath it, this is the key to all of it. So when you're choosing, I'm activating the heart, I'm activating the crown. Now I actually have that energy, the pink and the gold energy, to bring out into my family, to bring out into the world around me. I'm an emanation and a channel of that, as opposed to, it's like a singing bowl. They're prepared in a certain way. And when we hit them, when they come under pressure, they're going to vibrate out whatever they're meant to vibrate out. Whatever we have inside of us, when that pressure comes on, that's what's going to spill out of the cup, right? Whether it's tea or coffee or anger or joy. So the more you're choosing to be that, and you can bring that out. With parenting, it's okay, this thing happened. I'm going to activate my heart. That's going to activate the crown. That energy is going to come in. And that's what I'm bringing out into this situation. And the more we can do that and make that mindful choice to be an expansion more and more often, then the more we have to give. We're pouring from a cup that's always full instead of empty, which in pranic healing, we know that the crown chakra is actually a vessel, right? It is a cup. So
Yes.
you want a bigger cup or not? And
Right.
so that's really it. I didn't start out trying to create a parenting paradigm that was Twin Hearts. I made all of these connections and one day realized, this is Twin Hearts. This is like the taking your yoga off the mat. This is the meditation off of the cushion. This is living it, and really intentionally, what I call being an energy ally in your family. Because as it's going through you, it starts to transmute your environment. And you don't have to force your kids to learn this. They're going to learn it by your example. When they see something happen that they think you should have been mad about, and they see you stop, and kids, they see and they feel so much more than we know. No matter what words you're saying, they know what energy is behind it, right? They can, and they understand that. They see what you did. They saw you transmute the energy, whether they verbalize that or not. They know that there was that shift, and then it teaches them it's safe to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like osmosis, right? And
Yeah.
we think again, as parents, from what I hear, you think you're so separate by this physical boundary, but between the actions you show and the thoughts and emotions that you think. But we know as energy experts, it's all being transferred, right? The stress, the anxiety,
Mhm.
or the good things like how forgiveness, understanding, calm, it's constantly being transferred. And I love the word that you used again, energy ally for your families. I think that's such a great, succinct, but complete example of what you're teaching, right? And it shows how amazing Master Choa's teachings is, right? Especially Twin
Yeah.
Hearts, like you said, you weren't it. It wasn't like this all fell on you in like one time,
No,
one area. You just kind of connected the
years.
dots, Amy, and connected your passion to, and now you kind of created this amazing, specialty where you can really dive deep and help parents really understand, where they're coming from and embrace, deeply enjoy their life with their kids, right? Rather than seeing this as a fight and a tussle, like, which is, part of it is I feel like being a parent nowadays is constantly changing, right? There's different challenges nowadays versus, back
Yeah.
maybe 50 years ago, of course. Um, but, as with Master Cho's teachings, change and evolution is going to be constant. And I feel like the way that you took, the teachings from Twin Hearts and applied this in, such a focused but brilliant way, it just makes so much sense. So I appreciate and thank you for that, because now I'm picking up things for myself. Like, I'll take this down for the future whenever I have a child, and I'll be like, oh yeah, Amy said that. Yeah, energy ally, right? Let's be in that default mode rather than the solar plexus and getting frustrated with all and everything. So that's really amazing, Amy. And I wanted to kind of like close the podcast in terms of where do you see, like, because I know this is what you do for a living. This is your passion, right? This is how you help people. Where do you really see this growing and developing for the future? Speaking of change and evolution, and I feel like more and more parents are becoming conscious of this, right? Speaking of the different paradigms of parenting and things like that, where do you see the future of this field, your field, or parenting in general will be headed towards? Because I feel like, um, to give you an example, in medicine, everything is becoming more integrated. Everything is becoming more holistic. We're seeing things not for just the reductionist, like this system, this molecule, but connected to the entire whole. Where do you see your field, and especially parenting and energy and psychology and neuroscience? What do you think this is going towards, and how do you see this affecting future parents, making these decisions with their children?
Great question. I really see it as the future paradigm of parenting, and not that it's necessarily going to be everybody doing exactly what I say, but I think that parenting is already shifting this way because our planet is evolving and we are stepping into that golden age. And if you've been listening to Master Glenn at all, he's always talking now about how the avatar is coming and things are going to change. And so we're coming into a time where I think that the souls that we're birthing into this world, they're already more evolved than we are. They already have these skills. And it's not so much that I stepped up as this amazing parent as it is that the children I had made energetic shifts in me. And of course, all credit to Master Choa for everything that I understand and can apply. But I really think the children coming in are changing us. They are making us as parents wildly uncomfortable and forcing us to have to learn how to do something different. I mean, you can look on any social media platform and you find the 3-year-old talking about, it's okay, mommy, take some deep breaths. It's, and they're remembering their past lives and they're telling us all of this stuff, and they're here teaching us. And I really think they are here pushing us to shift, change, transmute, and to help prepare the world that they're meant to come into. And so as more parents are practicing spirituality and waking up to this, there's a deep desire in us of how do I share this with my child? And I think the more we start to, the more we realize they already have the answers. We're the ones learning. We're the ones having to connect back with our souls and, stop hindering them from being who they are. So I think there's a natural evolution happening, and there's going to be more and more hunger within parents to, it's not that most parents are like, I don't even want to be nice to my kids. All parents want to be like, have a good relationship and, for the most part, have some sort of niceness with their kids, right? But it forces us to become aware of the fact that there are these areas within us where we aren't able to do that yet. There are these areas within us that are they're pushing our buttons to make us more and more aware of, here's an area of you that's ready to heal. Are you going to step up and do that work? And I just feel like as a planet, we are shifting. Our entire consciousness is rising, and we're shifting into a space where that's going to become more of the norm. And as energy is becoming more and more mainstream, and we're starting to understand more about how energy works and our souls and all of that information, it's just spiritual technology, right? As we start to master that technology, it's going to simply just make sense that it's also being applied in all of those other areas. We have so many parents now who are unhappy with societal systems, and we're sort of taking back our power as parents to say, no, I'm going to cultivate this for you, for your future, so you can have something that I didn't. And I really think that heart-centered parenting is the future of parenting. And I think the kind of proof in the pudding of that is how many parenting styles we see popping up now, where you have, with the attachment parentings and the gentle parenting and all of these different things where people are already trying to put words to it and explain it and teach others how to have that connection. This is just coming straight from that source of connecting deeply with the soul and allowing the soul to shine through. And a great resource for kind of understanding this more, and I'm so grateful that I sort of found it independently of Pranic Healing, I didn't even realize the connection, is Rudolf Steiner's work. And he created the Waldorf Education. And in Waldorf Education, they talk about how you have to teach the child through their heart. You can't give a lesson that doesn't already live within you. They won't recognize it. So if I'm trying to teach you something and it's not at all important to me, how much do you care? Not at all, right? Why are we doing that to kids? So in Waldorf Education, they start with storytelling, and they allow the child to unfold and develop as a whole soul and a human being for the first so many years of their life. And then when they actually start formal lessons, it's taught through the heart. It gets time to be in their mind, and then they have to produce something out into the world. Isn't that just teaching children twin hearts in their education from the very beginning? And it's amazing. So they even talk about, the Madonna cloak, where how connected the child's energy is to the mother for so many years of their life and things like that. So if you want to go really deep into, understanding kind of that aspect more, Rudolf Steiner and Waldorf Education are a wonderful way to begin to understand that more deeply. So I found Waldorf Education, and then it's funny, I was at an event like 5 years later, and I was trying to tell someone, I'm like, yeah, Waldorf Education, it's so amazing. I'm like, have you ever heard of Rudolf Steiner? And they're like, Amy, you clearly haven't looked at the recommended reading list. We're supposed to read Steiner. And I just had not even, put the two together yet. So, but yeah, I think that's where we're going. And, he created that over 100 years ago, but we're seeing more and more resurgence, and a lot of, in California, a lot of the wealthier people, they're sending these high-tech people, they're sending their kids to the Waldorf Education, which is completely the opposite of the society we're building.
Yeah. Well, again, I know Rudolf Steiner is on our recommended reading list, but I didn't know that connection with the Waldorf Education. That's amazing. I'll have to look into that more. But like you said, Amy, I think it's speaking of the future of parenting, I think it's exactly what you're saying is, taking back the power, right, of being the parent. And which is part of it. I feel like you mentioned like the collective consciousness shifting is, I feel like parenting is one aspect of it. Is, there's a lot of change happening in our society, in our world, and especially when it comes to, these world changes, nothing comes closer to heart than you and your child, right? And having that power, but that light, love, and intelligence too, and working through in being, knowing that you are a spiritual being living this human existence, and the lessons that you need to learn. And like you said, your kids might be more developed than you, and you think you know better than them, but they're actually more advanced than you. So that's always something interesting that I always think about with Master Choa's teaching, is like you think you're helping the kids, but the kids are helping more for you
Yeah.
in certain instances. So yeah, that's so amazing. And I think this conversation was, really helpful for not only me as a person thinking about being a future parent, but for everyone, Amy. And I'm so deeply appreciative of your work, and how far you've come, and really the path that you've paved for a lot of us to really, see the teachings from Master Choa in a different aspect, but so much more meaningful aspect when it comes to our family. And like you mentioned, that energy ally term, I really love that. So I kind of end the podcast on this, Amy. And if there was a parent, and let's say they're not spiritual at all, they're not spiritual, they're not religious, they come up to you and like, hey, I heard you're this person that does this special parenting method. I heard great reviews about it. I'm a little unsure because I don't really believe in the aspects of the soul or spirituality. How can I benefit from this practice without being already subscribed to, say, being spiritual?
Yeah. That's great. And actually, I work with a lot of parents who are at that level. So I think one of the most amazing things about approaching it this way is you don't have to believe anything. You don't have to.
Mm.
It's going to work. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. By focusing on the heart, by interacting and building in that way, whether you want to call it a heart chakra or whether you just want to say it's just my heart, my feeling center, that space in my chest, whether you're just in it for, the neuroscience benefits of I want to reprogram my subconscious, I keep having these thoughts, I can't get past this frustration. It's going to work for that. Or if you're like, I just want to feel calmer, I don't understand why I'm so stressed out all the time. Okay, great. Then let's just do it for the, the nervous system benefits. But it's, you really don't have to believe any of it. And that's part of how I wrote the book. I talk about that in the introduction of like, I'm going to say these things, but just take what you want, leave the rest, but do the exercises. Take that time to practice. And the really cool thing about it is this isn't just a way to fix bad situations. I really encourage people to do this when you feel amazing already, right? Make it even bigger, make it even stronger, make it even more powerful. Don't make it something that you wait to do when things aren't going well, right? You don't step out on a basketball court and try to make that $50,000 shot and you're like, I've never even held a basketball before. Like, you might get lucky. You might get lucky in that time you can get yourself under control and not explode in that situation. But it's a whole lot better if you're like, I've been practicing and I know what to do and I know that this is easy. It's just like lifting weights. You can carry a lot more when your energy body is stronger. And then I think another important thing to recognize is that we kind of talked about, we don't want to mess our kids up. And when you start approaching things energetically, you get to relax into the comfort of knowing that you really can't. Energy is outside of time and space. Energy works all of the time. And so I even encourage parents who are dealing with guilt from past things, go back and do this then. Picture yourself then when you lost it. Picture yourself at that time. Do the exercise and then picture handling it correctly. Now you're transmuting past energy, which has present benefits. So there isn't having to be, that guilt. And you don't have to believe anything to do a practice like that. Right? It's like inner child healing where it's more visualization and just where we're sending the energy. So it's, So if you are not yet a parent, do these things now, because then you're just already going to have that built up in that capacity. You're dealing with frustration every day. Use it in practice now. And then you're going to be so much more prepared and stronger, when the children come in. And it can even change, which soul chooses you, right?
Yes. And that is a topic for a whole other episode, Amy. I'm sure we can talk a couple hours on that alone. But yeah, thank you, Amy. That's a great answer. And I think, because, our audience, whether it's pranic healers or non-pranic healers, what I love about Master Choa's teachings is, he never said to follow the teachings blindly. And in your same case, right? It's a practice. You practice it, see for the results, and you use intelligent evaluation, right? Accurate perception. And I think that's the beauty of the practice, even though we can talk about all these esoteric things about the soul and chakras, but at the end of the day, if it works, it works, right? And there is science behind it, and as you mentioned in your book, right, the neural pathways, right, the connection between the heart and the brain. So there's a lot of ways to look at it, right? But whichever way you decide to look at it, as long as you practice and
Yeah,
if you
you'll feel the
follow the
results.
teachings, yes, you
Yeah,
you will you
validate
will
it,
get the
validate
results.
it.
Yes, yeah. So that is, I think, the most incredible part, because when you can say it like that, it speaks for itself. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Amy. It's been
Yeah,
such a
thank
pleasure
you.
to talk to you. I felt like my heart-centered space is more proactive now rather than reactive, right? And I hope this continues until the day I become a parent. And I think I resonate with everything that you said. It's always better to start early than to be there and like, oh, I have to do this and this, right? So just like
Yeah,
building a muscle or working on a certain practice. And I really appreciate your background, because it really highlights all of the amazing ways Twin Hearts, Master Choa's teachings can be applied, right? We understand it from the healing perspective, but from the perspective of, again, being an energy ally to your family, to your child, I think that's so special, because they are like the closest extension
yeah.
of you physically, but also your heart. So thank you so much, Amy. We will leave Amy's links, social media contact. If you would like to work with Amy, I will leave all that linked down below. And yeah, thank you so much, Amy. Atma
Yeah,
Namaste.
thank you. You had great
Atma
questions.
Namaste to everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you've enjoyed the podcast so far, please subscribe, and please like and leave a review, as it really helps us to have more amazing guests like Amy on our show. Thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and take care.
Thank you.